In a rapidly shifting society, now more than ever, it is essential to stay grounded. Balance is key, but harmony is better. Here, we provide the keys to tap into the divine masculine without sacrificing the divine feminine, because confusion not transmuted becomes confusion transferred.
This is Divine Masculine Activated, a weekly Tuesday evening tap-in brought to you by Mastermind Connect and curated by the good brothers J.D. Weatherspoon and Courtney Grange. We invite you to grab your activation method of choice, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and bring your whole self into this space.
We love it. What the business is. We back up into
Peace and love, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, pronouns of all ages. Welcome to another episode of Divine Masculine Activated. We are happy to have you. We are excited to have you. I am Courtney Grange. He is
JD.
And we are here today to talk about fatherhood.
Happy.
We talk about them daddies. I'm that baby's pappy.
Right. That's happy.
But in keeping with our theme this season of Alt Black, we wanted to dig into fatherhood, its relationship to masculine and feminine energy, and how in today's Alt Black metaverse, Black fatherhood specifically is front and center, it's present, it's celebrated, but somehow it's still extremely overlooked.
Crazy how that works.
Even with millions of hits, millions of views, we still have these conversations and these themes of the polarities, the pull and tug of Black fatherhood and what it is, what it ain't, how it shows up, how it's not present, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're going to
sort of like Wale's rap career. It's weird.
Sort of like what?
Like Wale's rap career. You know, like it's just there, but no one talks about it.
Damn, that was a good one. Shit. Yo, and we haven't had a really, really strong hip hop reference this season. So thank you for reactivating our initial footprint in this space.
I'm here for the peeper.
For the peeper. Oh man.
So you're rocking this jersey in solidarity. That's a big step. I'm very proud of you for that.
Listen, I am who I am. And I'm gonna be who I'm gonna be.
My GSW socks, but I was like, nah, this doesn't match the shirt. So.
Listen, I was born not too far from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a diehard Boston Celtics fan. Shout out to the 2022 Boston Celtics for making it all the way to Game 6 of the NBA Finals against literally the baddest man with a basketball.
The best shooter in NBA history. Yeah.
And at this point in the conversation for having a seat at the table of the greatest, right? Top 5 with regards to everything.
That's because here's the funny thing, especially when we're talking about range. Even if you want to add in, the old heads who are like, well, it's a different game now. It's like, well, yeah, bro, it's not. You have to worry about getting your head taken off in the paint if you can drill it from 30 feet out and average 49 to 51%.
You know what I'm saying? on a regular basis.
Casually.
You know what I'm saying? Oh, he did this for a straight. No, the man averages over 30 some odd percent for his career, which is crazy. So, yeah, man, shout out to them golden light skinned boys down there in the Bay. But at the same time,
listen, it's light skin solstice. You know how it go.
It's still Boston Celtics all day, baby. Every single day, forever.
That's what's up, man. So fatherhood. After your team got son, let's talk about fatherhood.
Back to the topic. So I think it's important for us to ground this conversation in our own origin stories around fatherhood, right? How we even got to our own frameworks around what it means for us. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So for you, and we kind of we've touched on this in a couple of episodes previously in regards to our stories, our relationships to our fathers, different stuff like that. But for where you are today, JD, and how you look at your journey into fatherhood, separate from like what you've been taught, what you internalized, what's worked, what didn't work. But now you have that distinct pleasure of like being in the driver's seat to say, here's what I'm finna do, right? What does, I guess, first and foremost, how does that feel? And then follow up to that, what are some of the things that you are most excited about in the journey of fatherhood to
How does it feel? It is, what was that? The Italian Job,
come?
when they were, when what's his face, Wahlberg would talk to the OG, right?
Yep.
And they were like, "How are you feeling?" And it's like, "All right, cool. I feel fine." Fine. It's an acronym. Freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
And emotional.
So yeah, like very, very fine. I mean, it's that combination of like excitement. I think the first few weeks, like definitely the majority of trimester one was just like overwhelmed.
Mm.
It's like it started from the responsibility and all of like the question marks in the air of how the hell am I going to do this,
Mm.
to like diving deeper and realizing at the core of that was another one of my personal isms about I wanted to have X, Y, and Z accomplished
Yep.
before this chapter of life came about,
Yeah.
because the assumption, whether or not I realized it at the time, was that I embraced a lot of the projected assumptions about how parenthood went, which is all of your dreams and aspirations go out the window.
It's true.
Like everything is supposed to stop, where as opposed to the realization that like this is the beginning of a new life where whatever your purpose is just comes to you in a different way with a potentially clearer vision, because there's a lot, like that's what really there isn't much room for. It's just like your foolishness.
At all.
If you play it right, like actually allows you to be a bit more focused in whatever your pursuits are.
I mean, ridiculously, I would say for me, the way that fatherhood has impacted me the most is that I am ridiculously more focused on the path of making things happen, right? Like what it takes to really get stuff done, um, on a macro and a micro level. From I woke up at 5:30 a.m. I got myself together. I made O'Shea because it was O'Shea Ifa. I started working on breakfast. Oh, in the midst of like shower, shave, all that stuff that needed to happen. All of this before the little human's alarm went off at 7 a.m. for him to get up and get himself together. And then there
Right.
was a whole day. And then we spent time together and we went to the gym, et cetera, et cetera. Like all of that's happening. And that's the micro.
That's just to get the day on track.
That's just a Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? Or in my case, a Thursday, because of co-parenting. But in that sense, it's like that level of discipline to make it all happen. They don't never stop. There's no off season in this thing.
Right.
And then there's the macro stuff. Like, okay, how am I ensuring that I'm closing the gaps of what I know the public education system is not providing for him?
Right.
And in our case, Jameson is in a private homeschooling collective, which is leaps and bounds above or different from public school, but there's still a lot of gaps.
Well, yeah, because how can you realistically expect a system that wasn't made with this child in mind specifically to address all of the needs of that person?
That's right. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because that was my biggest adjustment with him being in this homeschool collective that's African centered and community based, and like truly a homeschool collective, meaning all of the people involved, the parents, the teachers, the administration, we all work together. And still in the midst of that, realizing, oh, there's still stuff that I got to fill in between to make sure that this little human has specifically what he needs. So, right.
It's funny that you mentioned that. So, like moving on to that piece, Like, I mean, you've known me for a few years now, so it's listening to people like, all right, I have a kid now, like I gotta switch up the discipline. Like, let me get up at 5:30 so I can make sure everything is straight.
Mm.
Whereas, like, for me, that's kind of always been the beat. Uh, so in this like period of time, I've done the complete opposite, like out of just sheer polarization. Like before, I always did it just because that's how I roll.
Mm.
Whereas the time is coming to where I'm definitely gonna have to roll that way because I won't really have a choice.
Yep.
So I'm sleeping in all the time. Granted, sleeping in to me is like, all right, I'm in bed till 7:45, but still, 7:45 is not 5:45.
That's right.
So it's like that now. Like I'm taking naps, I'm day drinking.
Day drinking.
like let's just do the
Oh
bull.
boy. Which is cool. I mean, I will say, like, the beauty of embracing the discipline is that you become very tuned into areas where you can take privilege,
Hmm.
right? Like when you're so far ahead of certain schedules, you know where it is. Like the past 2 days, I have literally not gotten out of my bed before 8:30 on purpose. And each day, Jameson has walked into my room around 7:45, fully
Hmm.
dressed, bed made, teeth brushed, peeled 2 or 3 oranges, had some little food, got some water, right? So that he can start his day and say, "Hey, Dad, can I watch PBS Kids?" Because he knows if he hasn't done all those things, I'm going to be like, "No, you can't. Matter of fact, come in here, sit down, and read a book." But if you show me discipline first, then you get grace. And I know that I've been like pushing that. His mom pushes that too. So in the moments where he's showing that maturity, I get to just for like an extra 15 minutes. And I think the biggest difference that I can't say you'll notice, but oftentimes parents notice, and this is dependent upon the energetic level of their child, you're never not tired. Like you're always tired. And for anyone who works hard or moves a certain way, like it's like, oh, I'm exhausted, I'm tired all the time. This is a different level of tired. Like this is sleep deprivation tired. But you train yourself, especially in those first 6 to 7 months, right? If there's breastfeeding or different things going on, even if there's not breastfeeding, every 2 hours somebody's doing something. Every 2 hours. So it's a shock to your system in a way that I can't really say anything else can be a shock. And that's where it becomes more important to keep that level of discipline to the journey because when you hit them periods where it's like, wait, what am I doing today? Well, what day is it? Hold on, what month is it? And you have to sit for a second because you've been on such a
Hmm.
for so long, like it hit different. So,
The days and time, yeah, it does. It like matters and it doesn't. It's like
oh
you
my
just know,
god,
like, it's feeding time. It's a sleep
yeah,
time. Oh, there's something to clean. Oh, they're off, so I'm back on.
yep.
And then life still has to go. Like you still got to go and get the oil change. Still got to take the garbage out. You still like there's still meetings.
Listen, you still
Yeah,
got to take a shit,
see what I'm saying?
like, and I
Gotta go to the dentist. Like,
yo, and not for nothing. I know we talking about fathers, but shout out to the mothers because in those initial weeks and months when the baby is literally attached to you, and even when they're walking and they like won't let a woman pee by herself or do shower by herself, it's wild to see. Like and live in this organized, harmonious, loving, ruthless jungle because it's like, yo,
if
we
the
are
center of
literally.
love and need and like evolutionary drive reduction, I'm hungry.
Listen, man, little humans are tiny dictators. Period.
Right.
Yeah. So moving the conversation forward, in our Mastermind Connect Brotherhood, we got a lot of fathers, a lot of father figures, a lot of people, men who embrace that role, however it shows up in their life. Um, and so I always am appreciative for the network because
Hmm.
it came into my life right around the time where I was becoming a single father. So
That's what I'm saying. You're in the middle of the custody situation.
woo, the amount of ears I needed to unload certain things and then receive in return, I get it. Or have you thought about this? Or here's this resource. Um, from your perspective in the journey that is currently underway, like what have been some Mastermind Connect resources that you've been able to tap into on the journey towards little human's birth date?
Right. Definitely the fatherhood and parenting session. I think really
Mhm.
just getting perspective, because I know for me it's so easy to get into the weeds of the logistics. Even knowing that, like knowing better and knowing what my tendencies are, like it still happens. And so
Yeah.
it's just the like training myself to continually give grace while still doing the stuff
Hmm.
to get ready for everything, right? I know forgiveness is one of the topics. Like, yeah, they would always break it down. And so, like, we went through a session where that was we look at themes. One was forgiveness, and that's a major part for me because I think I grew up with a great example of how to support and how to make a living, not necessarily how to live. Uh,
Mm.
and so a lot of that, I just had to figure it out because, like, the healing involved in reaching one's own, like, individual version of like self liberation
Hmm.
and like a lovingly joyful and frolicky space while still having your feet on the ground enough to make sure these dolls get walked is definitely not something that was modeled. And so for me, it was always one of those like, all right, the pressure applied on self was double, triple, quadruple, quintuple.
Mm.
And I probably made myself a bit worse for wear mentally before I figured that out. And so just like accepting the fact that I was trying to figure it out with no instructions.
Yes.
Um, and that because I did that, like regardless of how messy the process was, pointed I did it. So now who comes after me won't really have to deal with that unless they just choose not to listen, which is a very real possibility. However,
Ain't nothing you can do about that one.
that's above me. That's above
Yep.
me.
Yep.
Like, either take it or don't. Um, and so once I got to that place, I think it begot it became easier for me to no longer hold on to as many what ifs, right? What if I made a left when I should have made a right? What if I zagged when I should have zigged?
Yeah.
Because at the end, what was done is done. And so now it's like just be here. Like kids don't have a frame of reference for anything. I could take this jar of orange juice and pour it on my head in front of a 6 months old, and they're just liable to do the exact same thing. I just think it's funny because
That's right. Yep.
they don't know. Like there's no ISO 9000 rubric that they come in. Like,
Straight up.
and
And you could
they're
jump
not
and be like, "Hey, my child, this is a handshake." And literally from then forward, when somebody says, "Oh, shake my hand," they're like, "But I don't have a cup to pour on my head." Like it's truly that much of a blank canvas. So yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Mastermind Connect, the fatherhood sessions, the good brother Yave, Sak Passe, my G.
yeah,
Um,
I've had brother.
he's doing fatherhood at a tick. Whew, that is beyond measure and bound.
Don't
Um,
know, it's crazy.
and like getting it done. You know what I'm saying? Like not
Hmm.
skimping on any part of it. So shout out to the good brother, all of our good brothers in Mastermind Connect.
Yeah.
Um, but that kind of takes me to like we were saying in the intro, like the metaverse of this thing, right? When we look at the way that social media has allowed examples of Black fatherhood to be on more display, we often get these very heartwarming, emotionally charged examples of an edited reel of fatherhood. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So we see the cool, charismatic Black dad walking with the daughter. We
With the
hear
matching Jordans. Don't forget the matching Jordans.
with the matching Jordans, right? Or we see the family images and all of these different components that are beautiful. And I think that they are very beneficial towards showing that, like, not only does this stuff exist, but it's in high capacity. It's not one off. at the same time, I often struggle to find the spaces, especially in social media, where there's more depth to what that really is or what's really going on. And I see certain folks do it. Like my brother EY, 2 kids, wife, family, like really into it. And he speaks very publicly about like, all right, so this, process of learning how to do a young girl's hair, or
Right.
when I'm trying to balance, like I got to be on his laptop, but she home and the wife is tired, and this is going on, and I'm just supposed to be this pillar of like masculine stability, and all I want to do is just tell everybody to shut up, like those moments too, right? And I very much I don't know, man, but like it's one of them spaces that's for me very similar to the whole black love images that we get on
Right.
social media, where it's like, boy, if y'all don't take this candy paint off this thing and tell us what's really underneath the hood.
Okay, so now let's double click on that. Let's double click on
Uh-huh.
that. Right, because and that's for me, that's still as a culture part of the respectability politics. In my
Mhm.
opinion, it's like, all right, cool. It's like the difference between trappers and people who like are completely scared of being in the hood but love hearing trap music at brunch. That's what you know what I'm saying? It's the difference
Yo,
between Obalaka and Miami Beach. Like, relax. Okay, cool. Because at the end of the day, you don't get this without that.
don't.
But you don't want people, like, you actually don't want any part of this, but you still want to feel like you're like adjacent or participatory
Yeah.
in the process of it, right? And so for me, I've always been curious about like the cogs behind the scene that make things work, because that's what you really got to deal with. It's
Yeah.
3 a.m. This little person doesn't have a frame of reference for what's early as heck
Nothing.
yet. They
Nothing.
don't know that, like, son, I just lived in an underwater cave for 9 months. All I know is I'm hungry, and I can't use words.
You know what I'm
So I
talking
got
about?
signals that I have.
And we get caught up sometimes in these sound bites, these clips, these gifts of what the experience of life is like overall, whether it's relationships, parenting, or fatherhood in this case. And so it's like, yes, that. And then I can remember one of the fatherhood sessions. I can't remember the brother, but he was talking. He has a teenage daughter who's
Mhm.
very woke, very black, and very pro feminism. It might have been Talib, but I can't remember.
I'm about to say it's either Talib or Darrell. Sound like one of them.
Darrell, it was Darrell. But
Yeah, it
he was
sound like
having a conversation with her about like, listen, like Lil Mama, like I understand the high horse that you're on and the research that you've done and how it correlates to all these points that make you say this about like men and fatherhood.
the patriarchy and everything that you think is.
But like remember who's sitting across from you and who's been sitting across from you your entire life. Like
I've actually never not supported you. So
don't let these statistics like overpower the actual lived experience that you've had. And I think that's a major, major component where these social verses really jack this thing up, because it's like, so you really want me to have an in-depth conversation about some stuff that I've never even shown you in our experiences, little
right.
person. Like, come
Like,
on.
never had it modeled in your house. Now I understand why you're upset about it.
Yeah.
Just understand the reason that you're upset is because the values that you were modeled or that were modeled for you are better than that.
That's right. And the value that's been modeled for you has been one that's allowed you to understand the power of your own voice.
Right.
So you feel compelled and obligated to have a voice, even when you really don't necessarily have something to say other than what you're quoting from someone else. And I think that's a very challenging line of fatherhood, because all of what I just said has to come in a package of grace, listening, and not pushing down this person's point of view, because
Right.
they do get that as well. That's back to the teaching. It's like you have the space and opportunity and the right to have a point of view. A lot
Even
of
if you
times,
get it wrong, because like just how many mistakes did I make before you were born?
like, come on.
So I
You know what
can't
I'm
say,
saying?
oh, you're so young. Like, oh, you're so young and naive. What are you doing talking? And it's like, well, dude, like, how dumb were you at 14? Probably dumber.
And that's the space where I think, especially Black fatherhood, when you do take it seriously and intentionally, like that's always sitting right here in your medulla oblongata. Anytime your little human does something that you know is just completely off the wall, but 1000% reminds you of yourself, like you can't run from that.
So now, okay, so here's the real joke. So, like, in your journey of fatherhood, can you tell me about the first time that you can recall realizing that you were trying to discipline the you out of your child?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The first couple of times where I had to discipline my son with more than just words, and his response to like the physical, right? Like whether he got a pluck or pulled him up by his arm or whatever it was, and his response was like dead ass in my face, right? And this was at 2, at 3, and realizing like, ooh, okay, like that split second. In if you've ever been in a real fight, right, you know what I mean. There's that moment where it's kind of like
either we diving in or we backing up,
and everything stops, and it's kind of the part of the movie where like the narrator comes in and it's like, so in this moment,
right?
And you really have to be patient with it, because it was like in the moment, the first couple times it happened, I had flashes of those same experiences with my father and how he acted, flashes of those same experiences with my stepfather and how he acted, emotional rememberings of how I felt when they reacted, as well as like now being in this seat, like a full spectrum of this is why they reacted that way. This is why I didn't have the capacity to understand my part in this scenario, right? Like all of that's flowing through me in a split second. And I have to determine, what do I do? Do I push back and let him understand like,
there's right. No, like from the place of this is my house and
you yapping at a lion, bro.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's what's happening here. You're yapping at a lion. You don't want that smoke. But at the same time, is it time for that? Because we're going to get to that point, right? Like teens, the warrior years, like that's what that's all about.
I was about to say, like 14 to 17, you're going to have plenty of that.
It's going to be what it's going to be. But is it time for that at 2? Is it time for that at 4?
Right, because testosterone hasn't happened yet.
Right. And so for me, I have, surprisingly enough, really trained myself to one, continue to embrace like certain principles that we've got from The Way of the Superior Man.
Yeah.
But surprisingly enough, I find it more relevant to fatherhood than relationships, because a little human's balance between masculine and feminine energy is unbelievably like well tuned, because they have no, like you said, they have no form of influence to it. So when they feel, they flow. When they protect, they flow. Like whatever it is, if they're talking about freedom, if they're talking about love, whatever's going on in them is the thing that's going to lead.
There's no, for better or worse, there's no filter.
There's no filter. So if you can learn how to move with that,
right,
you start to literally fix certain things in yourself. And so my entire philosophy around every choice has an invoice, or the fact that like the principle will always win, really does come into play. And it's like, all right, so what is the principle? The principle is love, right? There's tough love, there's revealing love, there's truthful, all these different types of love. And it's like in those moments where he was, he dead wrong, he trying to pitch a tantrum, he doing something he knows absolutely well that's not how we operate here, or he's learning that. Say it again.
You say we've either discussed this or I've corrected you on this before. You're still
or you just trying to see, because that's another part of these children as well, is like they're going to test boundaries so that they know where they are.
Well, feminine energy, once again, it's a job. I got to check to make sure this container is airtight.
Exactly. So in that moment, I remember the first time he did it in a grocery store. He was on the ground. I said no to popsicles or something, and he laughed, and I like, get up. real quick, like on his leg or something. He jumped up and was like, "Don't hit me!" And I got eye level real quick, and
Okay,
I
that's
remember
crazy.
saying, I just got on like literally down to him and was like, "Son, I love you, but we are not the same." That's it. And I just looked at him, and I was like, "Give me a hug." And he was kind of like,
Right, the confused puppy look.
"Diffuse the bomb." That's it. Just diffuse the bomb. That has been my strategy when those moments occur. Is not to necessarily always try to teach, not to always try to exert force or power in a moment, but to literally have a superior state of mind and diffuse the bomb. That's why that's why I love dad jokes so much. Because as corny as they are, they will diffuse a bomb. Like you can be having a full-on argument with your partner, and the right dad joke in the right moment just it takes everything down. Um, and that's become something that my son and I really do together. Like my son is as corny, if not cornier than I am, and I
I
love
don't
it.
know.
Oh my gosh, he's such a cornball. It's diffusing in a lot of situations because I don't have to push.
Right.
Right? I can diffuse, and then we can chop it up. We get back to the baseline of like it's just you and me, baby. It's nothing else going on here. What you feel is valid, and I get it, but it does not always have to influence what your actions are. And that's a current thing that we're going through in both households is this notion of like this hugely emotional Libra baby that we have, learning that his emotional state does not have to always impact his actions.
Cool. So now let's dive deeper there. From a personal level, right? Like knowing a bit about what your upbringing in like the cloth that you cut from, right?
Mm.
What was that experience for self of allowing yourself room to feel all
Mhm.
of your emotions
Yeah.
after likely being modeled that like you sort of just maybe you address them, maybe you don't. Realistically, like you kind of just shove them somewhere and just carry on with the mission because you still got to do whatever you got to do, right?
Man, listen.
I was like still leaving room to like, well, I need to let myself process this. Like I have to
Yeah.
still go through emotions while still not allowing these emotions to affect the way that I'm moving in the world.
Moving. Yeah. I- that's probably where the biggest um like the truth of the matter being that parenthood is a marathon and not a sprint. That's what that space is for me because it's never done. I don't ever feel like I have it figured out. What you talked about earlier in regards to like not feeling ready, like
Mhm.
I don't ever feel ready for those moments, those conversations, those interactions. But I am prepared for them now. Like I have trained. You know what I'm saying? It is in a sense sometimes muscle memory. Um, to give a basketball reference, the way that a player can make a certain shot and everybody's like, how did he do that? It's muscle memory. Like you know where the basket is and you know the trajectory and the physics of it without even having to study those topics. You've just felt it and done it so many times. So my experience with opening to my emotions often is what I experience when my son is experiencing emotions for the first time or the third time or the this is when the world ends. I can't believe this is happening. And it's like, I know what that feels like. I remember what that feels like. And training kicks in. It's just like, yes, this is the moment where stillness was important. This is the moment where breath work came in, meditation, where mindfulness, where um, I had the opportunity to seek out counsel, and the only counsel available was my own. And so I had to learn how to be my own guru, right? Like all of that stuff comes in those moments. And it's usually where I either end up being real patient, right? Letting the moment go through, or where I just take a shot, like those trick shots, those and ones that happen, you just take it. You don't really worry about the percentage. You just got to take it continuously. And you have to continue to do that. And, your character comes into play a lot with children, at least in my opinion, with fatherhood.
Well, because I was watching.
Always.
Go by is what you showed them.
Always watching. And sometimes your words don't match your actions.
And they're gonna pick up on that immediately.
And they'll call you out on it. And sometimes you gotta, you know what, you're right. My bad. I did say I was gonna do this and I did that. So that's my fault. But other times you have to give them the reality of it. It's like sometimes the best plans fall through. Right? And a lot of times that can be challenging because you're also balancing making sure or trying to make sure that this human that you're giving all of this love and all of these resources to doesn't grow up to feel obligated and privileged. So when they hold you to your word, Dad, you said I could have a popsicle after dinner. And the reality is it took you an hour and a half to finish your dinner. And now we're late for bath time. We're late for bedtime. You probably won't get a story and a song. And we're going to be tired when we wake up in the morning. Like those things don't come into picture for them unless you start to paint it.
I was about to say, so now it's one of those like, why don't you know this? Like, oh,
And that's for me where the relationship between here's what I feel, but here's what I'm going to do really finds truth, because it's like, yes, I know you feel slighted because you're not getting the thing that I told you you could get, but you also did things that changed the trajectory of what's going to happen here. And you got to own that too, kid. I told you, eat your food, finish your dinner, stop talking. Why are you taking so long? Son, put food in your mouth. And through all of that, you chose to move the way you chose to move. You chose those actions. But you didn't have you didn't have a conception of like the component of time, because for you, you're privileged, right? You have the luxury of like having a popsicle after dinner. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never remember getting stuff like that. And it wasn't because I didn't have access to it. It wasn't in my psyche. Or
those weren't options that we were presented with.
Yeah, man. Listen, love with luxuries is totally different than love that comes in poverty and growth. You know what I'm saying? Like, I often at this age, or any age I've been since my son has been born, I often reflect and say to myself, damn, like my parent was doing this at the age I currently am, and having so much empathy for their experience, because it was like, well, they had way less than
that. Yeah.
Way less than I did. Way less resources, access to things. Like, it was just totally different. And so, you give yourself grace. You remember the marathon. You got to stretch. You got to drink water. And you got to remember, like, no matter what day of the week or how much you train, like, this thing going to push your body past the limit that you thought it was going to. It's just what it is. Yeah. So now, bringing it back around to you.
Right.
I know that one of the most challenging things for me on the journey to fatherhood, like those 9 baking months, was trying to right size in my head how to be a father and a partner, and how important that balance was to fatherhood. Right. So like you talked about these little humans always watching, but there's a component of that involves the relationship between the parents that isn't always easy to understand because of all the different factors that are going on with the mother, in terms of the emotional state, the hormonal changes, the everything that's in that realm, and the fact that is just as much of an unknown as what's going to be this bundle of joy that comes. And so for you, how have you handled that? Or how are you handling that? What's working for you in that sense? And if you don't mind, being vulnerable, what's something that's just like, yeah, I got that shit way wrong. Like, Didn't get that one right at all.
It's funny that you meant. I'm gonna start with the part where I got it fucked up. Bro, like if we gonna do it, let's do it. I think for me, it was one of those like pleasant surprises where, especially like growing up in the family that I grew up in, and also like the way that our society is structured, it's almost like pregnancies almost explained like a horror story,
Yeah.
right? Like, and especially like my mom or like aunties is like, well, it's gonna be days where you just gonna have to deal with this. It's like, oh, okay, y'all are projecting again because actually, like, this experience has been the exact opposite of like 80% of what you told me. So either you were lying or the caliber of person that I'm with is not anything like the caliber of person that you were. Because she ain't been nothing like that.
I ain't got the tea, but I'll sip my coffee on that.
Like, oh, okay, so there are levels to this divine femininity. Because to be
Yeah.
honest, she's been. I am genuinely, my mind is blown. The way that she's gone about it, the way that she adapts to things, it's like, I mean, yeah, like not to take away anything from myself because I'm quite intentional about most things, especially as it comes to like being supportive as a partner. So yeah, like I definitely go out of my way to make sure that there's certain levels of ease and just a lot that she doesn't really have to think about. But outside of some fatigue and like body pains, which get addressed pretty quickly as often as is possible, like it's been pretty smooth, bro. Like there haven't been that many super late nights. The mood swings have not really been that crazy, if at all existent. I mean, outside of like trimester 1, it's been generally smooth sailing. To be honest with you, like it's been a genuine honor and a pleasure. Like her sense of humor is remarkable about the way that her body has changed. Even like when she got in like a car accident, pretty serious one. Car got totaled, got whacked by an SUV. All the airbags deployed, door got jammed in. She shoved the door open with her by herself. Called out there, like rode in an ambulance to the hospital. By the time I got to the trauma ward, she had already ripped all the diodes off her body and was just walking around. They hadn't even bandaged her wounds yet. She's walking around in some flip flops looking for the bathroom because she had to pee. Like, like if she could, like she's still going to like a tactical training. It's just obviously legally she's not going to be allowed to go to the gun range, but she's still going to like just to stay fresh with her trauma care and you know what I'm saying, like basic auto maintenance in case I'm out of town and she got to change her own tire. Like she's still doing the stuff. So it's like she gets all the salutes. Yeah, bro. Anything that she needs from me, she got it.
That's beautiful, man. That is beautiful. We're gonna take a quick pause. I gotta help J-Mo get his shoes on so we can go with his mama. Hold on.
Yeah, get right.
Go to a birthday party and go bowling.
Yeah, turn up.
Co-parenting at its best.
So look, I opened the book of faces, and guess what? The status.
Yave?
No, sorry, hold on. And also, the glare is stupid because of the light. So let me see if I just tagged you in it.
I can't even see it.
Yeah, no, I just tagged you in it. It's so funny.
We need fathers now more than ever. I like it.
Yeah.
Aww. Hold on. I gotta call Jess real quick. Her Father's Day gift came in literally as I was going downstairs. Like it was.
That's always fun.
Yo. So your Father's Day card was literally sitting outside the door just now. This is too dope. I love this. You're the best, Pop. This is extremely corny. Thank you. Oh, absolutely. And it's funny, JD and I, the conversation we're having about fatherhood, he was asking me what's one of the resources that I use, and I was like, dad jokes. It lightens moods. It diffuses so many bombs when you tell a good dad joke in a good situation. Cool. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Those are the love pop gift for your mom.
That she loves so much.
For you. Yes.
Yeah, that her entire dresser is now covered in. Yep, there it is.
Well, at least it's got good pictures and good memories and stuff.
I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
All right,
Bye-bye.
peace. Yeah, this one is dope. It says, this may be corny.
But it pops.
Oh, how do I do this?
Okay. There we go. It's like, where's the pop? It's in there somewhere.
With a picture of my man in there.
Gucci, rocking the leke. Bing bong.
Those are actually beads in New Orleans, but we'll call them a leke for him because he don't need to know what those are really for yet.
Maybe when you go.
Dad, I got leke when I was. That's what he said. He's like, I got leke when I was in New Orleans, and I was like, great. So, what did you have to do for?
You and me and your mom have to have a conversation about this.
It's fine. He's good. He's in a good.
Sounds like some shit that would happen if I just let the boy go with Queso down in Venezuela.
Listen, man, the component of international hood that us in America sometimes just like completely freak out about when it comes to children. It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Also, like you have to change the conversation about what you think hood is, because like I know for me after my travels, it's like you have indoor plumbing. You're not from you be from the hood, not necessarily from the slums. So I'm from the trenches. When you had glass on the windows, doesn't count.
Right. You don't know what a bucket bath is?
Right. Or spotting over a hole to take a shit.
Or
like, or if you can put the toilet paper in the toilet, it's not true, dog.
If your morning as a 6-year-old does not start with sweeping the walkway and starting the fire,
right? We can eat.
You're privileged.
That's that on that.
Man. Jumping back into the response, you would finish off around the kind of the car accident experience and all that stuff. So that was kind of an example of what's going right.
Right. So the only thing that really went wrong with this that I got fucked up was like assuming it was going to be hellish.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, a lot more of the hardship has come from this thing. Well, yeah, that's the left side. This thing. And also to a certain extent the right one too, because it's like that which we invent, right? I know it's been a lot of the I shoulds by now, right? And then just dealing with the other inconveniences and frustration, because once again, like logistics, I had a plan, an order, and a sequence for how all this preparation was going to go, and of course, man, plans got lapsed. So with a lot of the baggage that I just haven't had enough time to like fully unpack and reorganize from like my previous relationship. It's like, all right, is something really off, or am I projecting?
Yeah. And that, in all honesty, will continue, regardless of your personal circumstances. Like that's often what it is something really off, or is something really going on here, or am I just projecting?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, am I just tripping? And so I mean, that's what I mean. It's been overwhelmingly positive to the point where like, Queso understanding, I'll just be like, yo, I'm tripping right now. She'll be like, I see it. Or, moments where like I'm drawing from my own childhood, like upbringing. And there have been aspects, like I know first trimester, especially when she started to change and her body started to feel stuff, like her sort of just sitting me down and looking like, resist the urge to be my father and just like continue to be daddy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like your papi. I already have a dad. I already have a papa. He lives in Caracas. Like,
I don't need you to do that.
like, yeah, I don't need you to do that. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, really, like, if I'm often than not, it was me trying to do too much. And so, like, quit touching shit.
Stop. You have to take your hands off it. Just take your hands off it. That's often what I say to myself. Yep. So I wanted to bring up back to metaverse of things, there was one thing in probably the last, God knows how long, because we assume we ingest so much content at this point.
It could have been a week, could have been 6 months.
There was one thing that really stood out to me, and it was a TikTok meme that then went viral. But it was, and I don't remember the brother's name, so we'll find it. But he was giving a speech, and he said, "My father walked 10,000 miles, right? I rode a bus. I'm in a Cadillac.
Got you.
I'm gonna be in a Mercedes.
Yeah.
His son will be in a Ferrari, but his son will walk again.
Yeah.
Right?" He said, "Tough times create strong people, or tough times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak or lazy men.
It creates weak men. Weak men create bad times.
Lazy men create bad times, right? But this is why you have to raise warriors." And man, it gives me goosebumps till this day, because there's still this component of the statement that is open-ended, in a sense of like, what
What's
do
a
we
warrior?
really mean? Well, what do we really mean by the term warrior?
Yeah.
What is a warrior, right? For me, being an Aries, right, being a child of
God of
Odin,
war. Yes.
a lot of stuff in me has already been war-based from jump, right? So like,
I mean,
I
that's
remember
hard. Yeah.
my dad handed me The Art of War by Sun Tzu when I was like 15. And I was just like, what? But I read it and it was like, ooh, like I remember being so intrigued by the strategy and the design of warfare. And in this piece of it, it always brings me back to how we only look at warriors as those that are in battle. We forget about lieutenants, sergeants, generals. We forget about all of the hierarchy of war.
War is a complex.
It's a whole complex
ecosystem. Like you could be the admiral, you could be the sniper. Neither the general or the sniper are anywhere near the blood and guts.
Anywhere. Or you could just be one of the brains. You could be a medical professional, right? Like one of my good homeboys. Yeah, one of my good homeboys did 3 tours during the Afghanistan wars as a medic, right? In those same environments as everybody on the front lines, had some experiences, but his primary responsibility was keeping people alive. And so I think that's a lot of times, especially with Black fatherhood in today's world.
Everyone assumes you gotta be in the trenches.
Come on, man. Everybody assumes this warrior type thing is so aggressive and only masculine, right? The whole concept of patience and strategy in warfare is largely feminine, because you have to be able to take yourself out of where you sit with an idea, or where you sit with the strategy, and allow yourself to be free enough to see it from those opposite angles and say to myself, this is not what I want to do, but this is what I would do if I was my opponent. You see what I'm saying? And for me, I apply that to to use the term from the younger generation, I applied to every op in my cipher.
Talk about it.
You know what I'm saying? Because it could be some real danger where we have to assess in a certain way. They could also just be the danger of a mindset, right? The wrong person in the wrong person in the right environment trying to nurture my child with something that is against the principles that I'm with.
Or alternatively, like that child doesn't actually need for theirs. That's what you needed for yours when you were that child's age.
And everybody ain't right-sized that yet.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's a major piece too, which draws back to now, like the boundaries that like I've been intentional in setting with like family, right? It's like, okay, well, she probably going through this, so you're gonna need to have this. It's like, actually, no. Yep. You know, like I respect like your experience with that. Like I get it. You've had X amount of kids. Cool. How many of those pregnancies were the same? None of them. No. Right. Right. So like I understand, even, like you've been pregnant, you haven't, and also y'all are 2 different people. So let's start with that.
Start there, and then go into how like in each pregnancy, in each childbirth, you were likely at a totally different phase of your existence.
Which is why all of my siblings are different.
Totally different. And that's father and mother. But like focusing on the father piece, I'm sure that your eldest sibling, who your dad was then, completely different person than by the time the youngest sibling came along. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And you can't, that's the part of this thing that I think is so confronting when it comes to fatherhood is like, you can't deny it. You can't act like it's not different. And if you do, you will very much see like the consistent movement away from you that people start to do. Right? Those that you love the most will start to distance themselves from you simply because it's like, well, you don't embrace at all.
I don't understand you anymore.
And it pains me to try to keep doing it. Right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're talking, we talk a lot of times about like examples of fatherhood. And I would say, or relationship, fatherhood relationships. My biological father and I now have the relationship that I always wanted as a child, but it wasn't possible until I was a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn that, right? Now I could hold that against him. I could continuously try to put him in a position to grow in
Yeah,
the
but
areas.
that's a condition.
It's a condition, man.
I
And
see
even,
that person as that's who he is. Like your dad has been the same person for quite some time, and I don't see him changing ever.
listen,
So
so
I
the
get
funniest for all of Duckworth, the one thing that I have learned from my father is consistency. This man is consistent.
Oh no, you can plan around it.
Very
You
much.
might not feel like it that day.
But it's not.
Because I've
And
watched
it's
y'all.
crazy to think, right? Like
Yeah.
I would, as much as I would never father my son the way my father fathered me,
Mhm.
I absolutely embrace what my father has taught me about consistency with my son every single day. It's why the schedule is so tight. It's why
Right.
anytime people see me with Jameson, they're like, yo, how do you have, like, how are you doing all of these things and being a father? And it's like, because the one thing my father showed me how to do is have a full life for himself. So now the only thing I had to add to that is the discipline to also be a father.
Dang, that's meeting in the middle from opposite directions. So for me, that's because like the consistency piece,
Yo,
100%.
no, run that back because that is black fatherhood in a nutshell.
Meeting in the middle from opposite.
Opposite
I'm talking
direction.
about my
My
upbringing.
God.
Yeah, no. Because for me, it's like I'm showing my dad how to live for himself.
Yes.
Dad taught me service.
Mm.
And so now it's just like, okay, he's in that stage now. It's like, all right, cool. Like I'm sure I'm probably one of the first or only people in his life. Like, so what have you always wanted to do? Like I found out a few months ago, my dad always wanted to learn how to play piano. So like
Really?
he doesn't even realize it. Like I'm signing him up for piano lessons.
See, and those are the things now where at 21, when I had the most polarizing experience of my life with my father, my grandmother was the one who gave me the wisdom. Sometimes children have to raise their parents.
Oftentimes, that's their job. Is whether or not, like, how long does it take the parent to figure that out, if at all?
Right. Yep.
I started raising my parents when I was 12.
Yeah.
And I was aware of
I've been emotionally invested in my parents probably since the same age.
That's what I'm saying. Like, realistic. Like I said, it's funny because those are conversations like when my mom, she was like, "Oh, dang, like I put like a lot on." Like, well, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like where being precocious has like the double-edged sword. It's like, well, you're aware of a lot of shit. Like you have perspective. It's beneficial. Like you're a good person to talk to.
And we've seen you do it forever. So like,
Right.
can't deny it.
This is one of those
my
like,
goodness.
like so when
Yeah.
I put the mirror up, I think, and that was the piece. Like the things that I didn't realize I needed to hear, where it was like, I'm sorry for not being ready for the truth that you had to give me when you gave it to me, because you were gone when you gave it to me. That's was like, oh, okay, I needed to hear that. Didn't realize. Thank you.
Appreciate you. Yep, all the way around. Oh man. All right. So we gotta walk these dogs today.
You know how I go.
So in a recap for the good peeper,
That part.
everything that we've been going through or discussing today has been all around the concept of fatherhood as it relates to masculine and feminine energy. Now, if
Yeah.
you don't know what we mean by that, go check out a previous episode because we've given it to you so much at this point. We just keep the movement moving forward. From a resource perspective, I'll give one of mine, and JD, you give one of yours. But at this point, with a 6-year-old who's often feeling like he's going on 60, one of my favorite resources is dad jokes. I'm not getting all philosophical and deep with it, but a good dad joke is literally the best way to diffuse so many bombs. So for me, I leverage dad jokes or just dad corny humor in a lot of what I do with my child, with my co-parent, with other people, just in the entire sphere of fatherhood, because it is a level setter that most people don't expect, but everyone appreciates. What you got?
That is so cute. So the homie Kier Gaines, I ran into him at a joint up in DC. I didn't even realize who he was at the time. And I was like, oh man, Jit funny. But yeah, like Jit funny. But yeah, so I be on his IG. He gives he's a licensed therapist, but he also is good at not taking himself too seriously. I'll be following his shit. And then from the erudite left brain sector for your tangibles. So it turns out that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has under their whole Healthy Families initiative, they created this Fathering the Man in the Family. And so it's a federally backed initiative under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Feel free to check that out.
Look at our government actually trying to do something right.
Right.
Oh, man. So as we always do at this time, we're gonna get into our gratitude, attitude, and latitude for today's episode.
Yeah.
Kick us off.
All right, gratitude, man. First and foremost, giving thanks, fat adupe, to everyone who embraces their divine masculine and creates the containers for families of all sorts to function safely and happily.
We salute you from a deep space. Our attitude today is a quote, fatherhood quote, no less.
Mm-hmm.
A good father is one of the most unsung, unpraised, unnoticed, and yet one of the most valuable assets in our society.
Listen, man, peace be still. You know what I'm saying? You don't hear about the CIA's successes. You only hear about the failures.
Bang, bang. And last but not least, today's latitude. JD, you want to take that one?
Yeah, let's get on it. So, parenting is a marathon, not a sprint. Stretch out the water, and prepare to be pushed past your limits.
That's what we do here every time we can.
Hey, find the edge and lean past it.
That's it. We thank y'all for joining us for another episode of Divine Masculine Activated. We will see you again soon. And until then,
live long and prosper.
Peace and love.